Good. So with the people in the room, I'm going to share my screen and invite you to our ISPE. So in the chat, I put the link of the Klaxoon board. So if you don't have an account, you can create an account. You can join. I'm going to share my screen as well. The idea for us is to, record a few ideas. And we're going to talk about CQV because that's our favorite topic. We're going to talk about paperless, paper to glass. What are the things to consider? We're going to discuss a little bit of where we want to go about ISPE 4.0. Just give me, can you ask Shanshan to plug your computer? Start it. If my computer died, we'll use her computer.
Her computer.
So I'm not at my house. I had to hijack someone's house, and I don't have a charger for my computer, so I apologize. If my computer died, I might join you with Shanshan computer. Okay, so UBPU, how many people we have? I don't see that. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
21 so far, including you.
Yeah, I count for 20. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so what you should see is our Klaxoon board with the new logo of Technical Tuesday, right? Which hopefully you're going to see once a month. The board works as such so that you can follow me, and if you move the board and you want to refollow me, you can follow there. You can share you can join the board on your phone if you just want to. You can scan the QR code and boom, you will be on the board on your phone if you're using a laptop and a phone. The idea will be to run a few surveys with you guys. It's the same board we use for our community of practice every second Thursday of the month with the CNQ community. So you can explore a little bit what we discussed and did over there. So you can see here, we had discussed about the different guidance. We had discussed about the design review and DQ. We had some, discussion about what is a URS and what we do over there. But today, what we want to talk about is Technical Tuesday. So for the ones that are in the board, if you double click on those pink question, you can take a vote and then I can bounce back on that, right? And then we're going to start. So basically, what I'm asking you is that if today you are doing your protocol on paper, right? So I want to see a little bit how many of you are doing paper, how many of you are using any kind of solution. I try to be as agnostic as I can. Now I'm biased because I'm using Neat, which is one of the solutions. There are many other paperless solutions available on the market. So if I'm talking about a certain solution, my reference is that one. But I think the mindset is the same. And what we try to do is to talk about paperless, paper to glass, and it shouldn't be limited to CQV. So in the ISPE, you have community of practice, and we have a community of practice of CNQ, right, which is the new baseline guide and things like that. But you also have a community of practice of paperless CNQ, which I'm part of, and it's a monthly call where we share idea, and the idea of this Technical Tuesday is to tell you what has been discussed over there, but also give back to that group what we are doing here. And then you have another community of practice, which is called Validation 4.0, right? And I found it was interesting to talk about paperless and to talk about 4.0. And then you will hear about things like machine learning, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, digitalization. And so what I will try to explain today is a little bit how we have put with Joon all those terms into a journey that should bring effectiveness and efficiency in our CNQ approach. So I see that one person has voted on this. So what I will do, I'll reshare the link in the Zoom meeting. If I can do that, if I go into the chat and I put back the link. So if you click on the link in the chat, you will be able to access this board, right? So The question was, do you do your protocol on paper? Do you scan your protocol after execution, yes or no? Do you see the benefit of using a paperless solution? And what will be the main benefit of a paperless solution, which is an open question, right? So if you could put it in one word, what you see. The access code, you cannot join the, no, normally it's an open board. So all you have to do is to click on the link. Now all the access code is this one, right? But that's already in the link. Yeah, does anybody? And then what you need to do is you double click on those. I see some people can do it. Maybe those are, you know, the big fan of. And one of the questions we have is that how easy is it to find back some of the information, right? And you know, my question are leading to some of the topic of discussion. And we can, you know, if you are interested, please leave some comment. We can, you can unmute yourself by all means, do that. But I believe the people who don't scan after execution, I should have said, do you keep the paper copy, or is it because you have a paperless solution?
The votes coming in.
Votes are coming in. Give her, if two people who are voting. So, you know, you can already see the challenge of digitalization, right? It's the user adoption is one of the challenges of those digits. And you have so many solutions. So I think also one of the things we will realize is that the diversity of the solutions that are available at the beginning of digitalization is one of the challenge that you know that you might find because your vendor, you know, your contractor, your different site. There is so many solutions available now that as long as you don't have a little bit of an harmonization, it's complicated. I remember when I started to use a computer, the ASCII code didn't exist, right? So when you were typing a document on a Mac and you tried to open it on a PC, you couldn't have, you know, the text was gibberish, right? And simply because there was the ASCII code who came, now we can open Word document on Macs and PC, and internet can exist. So, you know, that was the early stage of the digitization. Now, while you're answering those questions, this is the question I ask because I was talking to a regulator, right? And I said, so I make a statement as if I was a regulator, and I say regulators are concerned about patient safety, data integrity, and in this regard, regulator expectations are the same whether you do digital or paper, on premise or in the cloud solution. Ultimately, it's the market authorization holder who is accountable. And the part in red is Bob Tribe, you know, Bob Tribe being a regulator, was a regulator, correcting my statement, right? So they want efficacious medicine made to GMP standard, and they want full traceability of all manufacturing QC testing. Now, the means of you doing that, the regulator doesn't want to, you know, I won't say it doesn't care, but if you meet the primary objective, whether you're using paper, paperless, is any other means, is the same for them, right? So some people are scanning, it's user-friendly. Okay. So what I want to explain, you see we have a journey here, and we can put some idea. So if you click on the little plus, you can put some idea, right? So I'd like to understand what are, in your perspective, what are all the protocol that we are doing on paper, right? So you just have, so I can give you one protocol we do on paper is NIQ, right? So IQ are things that you can do on paper. We also do OQ, we do, and then you have all those other, we do cleaning validation, right? They are in terms of, so for me, they are the maintenance form. Those are protocol where, you know, you say, I'm going to do more checklists and things like that. Those are all things that today in your facility, you are doing on paper, right? We have batch record. Some of those are still on paper. And then, okay. A lot of things that we still do on paper is our periodic review, right? I see a lot of people printing trends and putting those trends in a Word document and reviewing those trends and writing down and then eventually printing it and reviewing it, right? I don't know if you have, you know, you can populate those. And the idea is to say, okay, what would be the difference of those things done on paper compared to the paper to glass, compared to the paperless, compared to the 4.0, right? And what I will try to discuss with you, and if you have your own experience, is to explain where do we put the digitalization, where do we put the Internet of Things, and where do we put, you know, those machine learning and data and other. So one of the things I think we do is that we take those IQ documents, those protocols, and we do them in paper to glass simply by scanning them, right? So that will be one way where maybe not the execution, but by scanning my document, I move away from the paper form and I will put that document in an EDMS, which is an electronic document management system. And I would have kind of done the first step of a paper to glass, allowing anybody anywhere in the world to have access to a document I did in my facility and I did in my IOQ, right? So the document will be eventually pre-approved with, I would say, a DocuSign, right? So a lot of people say the pharma industry, we are lagging behind and things like that. I think there is also a lot of things that we are doing and we don't realize that basically we already digitalizing our process and the paper to glass, which is the first step, is ongoing. It's not perfect, but it's ongoing. So if you have a DocuSign for pre-approving your Word document in an EDMS, or for example, what we see a lot at the moment is a quality summary QSR. I'll write it, quality summary report, right? When you do a quality summary report, you might not have, you know, any test execution, right? So you summarize reference and things like that, and then you put this one in a DocuSign, and that DocuSign could go through a workflow in a EDMS. Well, this is paper to glass, right? A few years back, we would have still print that document and wrote it and sign it one by one, right? Now, the problem of, for example, that IQ is that I can scan it and put it in the EDMS, but what I can do also, if I have I would say a higher maturity, is execution in on a computer. So what you see is that protocol here now, I will execute it on a computer, right? And so when you do that, your system needs to have a series of features to allow you the complete IQA, right? To know who was logged in, when did they record it, could they not modify? If, you know, Adobe DocuSign allow you to lock your document, but can I crack it? And, you know, all those things are still paper to glass. That means that we really have the mentality of saying, I was doing a protocol in a certain way, and now that protocol, I will type it in Word, and I will put it on the system, and I will execute it. But instead of execute it on paper, I will type my result on the keyboard and sign on the screen. But that's what we call paper to glass, because when I do that, I take my paper process and I simply translate that paper process into a computer without changing the process. Okay, so that's what we call the paper to glass. It still has a lot of benefit, again, in the sense that you will have access to your document anytime, anywhere. And that is one of the key benefits, right? The number, already the EDMS compared to when I start to work in the pharma is fantastic, right? Because if I want to do a change control and I need to have the IQ and I need to change some of the thing, I can see the result. And retrieving the information is one of the key benefits of the digitalization, right? So it's the rapidity and the instantaneous access. I don't need to call my doc controller, who call the archive, who fill a form, who get a box, who get it to a truck, who arrive to me, and that could take 2 to 3 weeks or 3 months, right? So the access of the digitalization to the information is key. So this is the first step. For us, the next step will be the paperless, right? And that's where specific software to do the task, whether it's a NES software, whether it's a change control software, whatever, start to be beneficial, right? So in the paperless, and that's why I put the execution to a computer, I start to use a specific function that do not exist on paper. And that's why you start to be paperless. And in my ideal world, those functions are database related, right? That's why I put that little icon of a database. So you don't treat the information as a vertical flow of information like you have in the document, but you start to look at the information as a multi-to-multi relationship database. And for those who were there at the Thursday morning meeting when we were discussing about URS and things like that, you could imagine that I can write a URS in a one long text document explaining everything I want to have, or I can write a URS in a table in a Word document, or I can even write a URS in an Excel sheet, and where every line of that Excel sheet would be a piece of information, right? That would be really the paper to glass. So, but then the paperless will say, instead of having all those lines, I can now give a unique identifier to those user requirements and enter them into a database, so I can query my data in different ways, right? So really, for me, the paperless is thinking in terms of database. So I could say, show me all the safety-related function, show me all the quality-related function, right? Or I can say, show me all the function that have something to do with the temperature, or all the function that have something to do with the material the specification. And then you can start to query the data and have different type of report without to have to modify your data. The same way as we talk a lot now, due to the Annex 15 and the ISPE baseline guide coming out, are requirement traceability matrix, right? Where I have a series of user requirements and I will do a series of tests to demonstrate that all my user requirements are met. And if you consider that, this is really a database relationship, right? I have one database, which is all the requirements, and one database, which is all the tests. And I will have a multi-to-multi relationship saying those 3 tests show that user requirement is met, or I can say those 3 user requirements are met by doing that thermal mapping, right? So if I do that, I basically, in my head, linking the test database to the URS database. When we do it on paper, we write a URS, and then we write test, and at the end, we write a quality summary report, putting on paper those links, eventually on paper, paper to glass by putting hyperlinks, so it's easier to retrieve the test. And if we go on paperless, we go proactively linking all those things in the database, so I can show us the system, did I link all my user requirements before approving my IQ or my test protocol, right? To make sure I didn't forget any, and it's not in the quality summary report that I realize I forget any. Or I can, based on the, the quality filter, find that all the quality things are done, or from a safety perspective, show me that all my commissioning and safety points have been answered. And that's why you start to link things in the database, and you can't do that on paper, right? This is really, the digitalization, proactive digitalization of your protocol and your thought process that will allow you to build those databases. And that's where you start to use functionality that do not exist on paper. Now, again, the paperless, you can do that, on premise with your own server, or you can do that using a SaaS solution, right? So a SaaS solution is software as a service, right? Which is basically what we all use every day. The board we are here, I don't own the board. I don't even have installed any software. The same when you use Zoom, those are SaaS solutions. You're just logging. There is a software somewhere that is running, and that software, that web browser you're using is just a window to the software, and what you do, you pay monthly for those software solutions. So we can discuss about the benefit of those SaaS solutions and the risk of those SaaS solutions, and we can do that in a minute. And then we can think about what's beyond the paperless. And I think this is, for me, the dream solution, where all the software we are using today, whether it's TrackWise, whether it's MES software or electronic batch record, or whether it's a need file genesis and things like that, are still very much still in the paperless. And my vision of the 4.0 and things that are discussed is you don't even do protocol, right? You don't do process validation anymore, right? You review things only by exception. I try to explain myself here is, let's say when you do validation, you know that your system needs to be qualified so that you can do the validation. To do the qualification of the system, you have a series of tests to be done to make sure it works, and you will record those results in a protocol. Now, if everything was linked from inception, from the moment you place your purchase order to buy your first stainless steel or your first batch of plastic, right, all the way to your requirement of your product, well, basically all the data exists, right? And all the protocol we are doing is just to make sure that the characteristic of the system are meeting the user requirement. Now, this is very much a quality control that we are doing, right? So we go to check that someone has purchased the right material. In a 4.0 world, the system wouldn't allow you to buy the wrong material, right? That's where all our database and all the data that are available should be pulled in a huge data lake so that the system will tell you whether it's compatible or not, right? The algorithm will tell you, yeah, this is the right stainless steel because the purchase order of your supplier was the correct one. And, if you could link all the data in the world from the moment you buy the stainless steel to the moment you do your cleaning validation, you have an algorithm that makes sure that all those data match. Today, we don't have that algorithm. So what we do is a lot of protocol to have all those step-by-step checked so that we can go to the next step. But basically what we do is taking snapshot of a series of data sets. And in the 4.0 world, we wouldn't even have to do that, right? The system will tell us when there is an error and we just go fix the error. And so that will be the 4.0. So for example, if you take your process validation, if your whole facility is digitalized and your whole supply chain is digitalized and you have electronic batch record where nobody writes nothing on a piece of paper, and you have a good design space, knowledge space of your process, where your process automatically adjusts the different parameters because we know the relationship between the different parameters. I know the expected result, right? And so as long as I'm within the expected result within my model, my system is validated, right? But that means we need first much more digitization. We need all those data to be structured in a way that you could build one system that query them all together. And the system will only flag when the data are not part of the model, meaning you are out of your knowledge space, therefore it's not validated, right? And so for me, this is really the 4.0. So you have some solutions that are going to the 4.0, but you understand that to go there, we need digitization and Internet of Things, because I cannot do that on digitalization only. It means if I scan my paper document and I create a PDF, I will never be able to achieve the 4.0, right? So the way the data are captured and all the metadata and the structure of those data is the harmonization that we need in the industry, right? From raw material to IOQ to everything. And I think, you know, there are more and more working groups that try to harmonize the data set we have in the industry so that those kind of algorithms could run. There are also people that basically create machine learning to structure the data so that whatever you get in, they can clean that up and run, right? So the first project we did in digitization was we get an Excel sheet, we get all the timestamp, and we say, okay, that is temperature, that is pressure, and we were. Now today, based on the input there, the machine can detect whether it's a pressure, whether it's a temperature probe based on serial number of the probe and the make and model of, you know, all your vendors start to have Internet of Things in their sensor that are communicating the type of data accuracy, everything the probe is giving, right? Before we just had a trend and we were telling the Excel sheet, this is temperature. Today, the machine learning will recognize its temperature because it can read the Internet of Things of the probe, right? And so you don't need to tell the system it's a temperature. The system knows because the metadata coming with your temperature are available. Now, if those data are also coming with the limit high, the limit low of your process, well, there you go. Your system will just give you an alert or an alarm, and those are all part of the digitalization, right? So when we go in paperless CNQ today, I think we are at those 2-3 years coming, we'll see the revolution of the paper to glass and paperless. A lot of the company we work with at the moment are doing the paper to glass, right? That means they're taking their paper process and they ask to put that paper process in a system so that people can key in the data directly to a computer without having to scan them, right? And that's the first necessary step, because once all those data will be available directly into a digital form and not a scan form, right? Then very quickly you will see that everybody will want to ask those data more, right? We will want to have trend. We already start to see when we do a paperless solution, people want to review Okay, so what you can do there is the next project, you say that was the most likely cause of failure. I'm going to mitigate it better. And then I go in my favorite topic, which is ICHQ9, or quality risk management. So you can imagine if you put that in your process validation and things like that. And instead of doing root cause analysis, you just query your data to find those. No, the next step, where then again we go to the 4.0, you don't do those queries. The system will do the query, and every time something is wrong, he will say, those are all the things that are different today compared to when it was good. And machine, you know, an algorithm will tell you your data set variance here, although they all within the limit all the time, they were all in the upper limit, and that's why you crash over there. So you have the most likely root cause, and then a human will take the decision whether that algorithm is right or wrong. The next step, and that is machine learning, right? Machine learning is to make regression based on the data set that allow you to make a decision. Artificial intelligence is basically the software when you make the decision and say, it crashed because of that, and you will automatically correct it, right? Which in the human health and knowing our quality assurance today, and the majority of those mathematical models, we're not there yet. But I think the machine learning could very quickly telling you, every time you have that trend, it ends up badly. And every time you have that trend, it ends up well, so that although you don't reach any alert level, the system can tell you, overall, you have an alert. And again, this is typically, if you read the ICHQ 10, this is what they ask you to do in the periodic review, right? And all those review, when you have data set, you know, it's like your CRM and your ERP and all of, you can build that so that you don't need to put the human effort to create those reports. They come to you automatically. And you can imagine if none of you have ever had to put a trend in Excel, the time you will have to analyze data to take the right decision because you're not busy digging data, right? And for me, this is what paperless and 4.0 should bring, is that we're going to spend our time creating more value for our quality because we don't need to spend time taking a print screen, copy that image, put it in a Word document, write a report, PDF it, call a meeting, discuss with everybody, sign on it, you know, scan the signed paper and put it in the document system. All of that will be done in a second and will only call you if the trend is different than last month. And will most likely tell you it is different because this and this and this have changed. And then you decide what you do, right? So that, you know, 10 full-time equivalent will be reduced to 10 full-time equivalent building quality in your system. And I think that's what paperless and 4.0 need to go. So I don't know if I see some stuff in the chat, right? So a person posted, she already sent this to me. In a paperless concept, especially for IOQ, in my opinion, it will be effective if the software function embed the machine functionality. So it will put the URS and become machine. Yeah, I agree with you, right? I think the harmonization of IOQ, FAT, SAT, and things like that. We do those things because 20 years ago, we didn't have any access to computerized system, right? And it really came from there. And now we are used to it and we expect it. And it is some things that we understand, right? I do believe that and again, you take the Annex 15 and they talk about IQ-OQ. You take the process validation guidance of the FDA, they just ask you to demonstrate it's fit for intended use, right? They don't tell you need to do an IQ or an OQ. They ask you to demonstrate that it's fit for the intended use. Means you need to define the intended use, which is your URS, and you need to build a machine that conforms to that and then do a certain amount of tests. So in the future, ideally, as soon as you have a user requirement, associated with that user requirement will come a test, right? The way we do things today, which is on one hand, you have engineer that write user requirement, and on the other hand, you have engineer that write IQ-OQ, and it's not the same engineer, and the guy who write the URS doesn't know what the IOQ guy have written. It's a bit of a nonsense because ideally it's like a Lego block, right? When I take the Lego block of the URS, I should automatically have a list of Lego block for my IQ-OQ PQ, right? That come together, that help the user to make the decision. And if the user always check the test 1, 2, and 3, and those were always good, well, you can quickly imagine that in 1 or 2 years, the machine will build my protocol automatically. And all I will have to do is to review it. I won't even have to check those Lego blocks. We know that when you do that, it's always good, right? And then you can extrapolate like that so that the machine will test itself, right? So that's for me really the beauty of the paper to glass and the paperless and the 4.0. And I think the new generation that hopefully never use a paper when they were at school because they were already using iPad and things like that, like my kids, will think that what we were doing is completely stupid, right? Because they will come with new ideas so that all those will be seamlessly integrated in a digital process, right? I don't know if any of you, the people moving my question, it's good to see where we are with that. How easy to find back the information, the benefit using paperless solution? Yeah, so I hope I explained a little bit what is the difference between paper to glass, right? Which is basically I take an IQ and I PDF it, or I take an IQ and I do the execution on a computer, but I still do an IQ, to a paperless, which is those links and things like that get a little bit more automated and I can query my data differently, right? Which most of the solutions that are paperless today are still getting the user to onboard on the new way of thinking, right? I think you could build the whole IOQ, PQ change control in an Access database. We are not connected yet to think in terms of database in Access, right? But I guarantee that in 5 years, nobody will think in the way we're doing in terms of URS, IQ, and quality summary report. The quality summary report, if you ask me, is the most waste of time we could ever do, right? We write the URS, we write an IQ, we do a traceability matrix, and then we pay someone to review all that and write a report. That report should be, you click on a button, you have the number of non-conformity, you show that they are closed, you show that all your tests are matched, you show a traceability matrix, period. It's just query existing data that we reformat into another Word document that we make a lot of mistakes in the tag, in the link, in the test we choose, because we do it retrospectively and not proactively when we build our data set. Oh. Joon?
Yes, Pierre.
Say something.
Well, I think like there's still a couple of ways, like it's quite, like Pierre said, it's gonna take another 3 to 5 years before we really get that, right? Because now we're just only going from paper to glass, and then moving everyone to paperless does take a lot of mindset change, right? So until we're all ready to make that big change, the next step is not going to be possible, right? So I just like to reiterate what Pierre has mentioned to you about regulatory expectation when it comes to paper or electronic, that they don't really matter, right? As long as patient safety is really maintained and you can prove your full traceability, how they see it is the same, right? So the important thing is just to not be resistant to it, try it out, have a first go at it, and then it will bring you to a more efficient way.
So one of the things we realize as well, right? When you embark in a digitalization project, right? You need to have early adopter within your organization. And, you know, I've been doing a series of ISPE with ISPE Singapore, but talk about what is digitalization and mindset change and things like that. You won't understand what we're talking about if you didn't try to do one of those projects, right? Again, moving from the whiteboard on the wall to a digital whiteboard come with a lot of challenge, right? The way we were doing that is first we had a whiteboard, and then we erased the whiteboard, right? And we were doing minutes of meeting. Then came the smartphone, and everybody was doing a whiteboard, and Jesus, we were taking a picture of the whiteboard, and that was digitalization. And then you start to have so many pictures of whiteboard that, you know, you lose yourself in the information. Then you start to have a little bit like this solution, which is a whiteboard, but you can see here I can query my data. I can give you a column view. I could give much more metadata. I can view everything by list. I can, see all the files that are in this. I can see all the media. So you see, this is basically a database, right? Which is different visual perspective of the database, which allow me to take different decisions. So this is the digitalization. The next thing is, ideally what you want the whiteboard to say is like, based on the location I put them in the whiteboard, it will automatically assign the metadata, right? Because it should understand that all those are linked to paper. And that's the next step, which is the machine learning, which is going to do that, right? So this is what projects are doing. And we all have a daily job, and very few of us, daily job is to digitalize, right? We suffer the consequence of early adopter that want to push to us what they think is a good solution. And it is just painful, right? And we do a lot. And some of those solutions we try to integrate are just costing us time and bringing no benefit. And I think those are the projects you need to, you need to pivot. You need to start to do something else, right? If your users are not automatically using it because it makes their life easier, you are on the wrong path of digitalization, right? Once we start, so there is a little bit of a pain moment that you need to have with a very small team of early adopter enthusiasts, because they like to suffer and they will go to it. If 6 months down the road, that small motivated team is still suffering, you don't have a good project.
Yeah. So what would you say about like the support from management for this small team that they can actually power through the pain?
Yeah, you need to free time for those people, right? It's one thing to go to the pain of trying something. It's one thing, and it's another thing to go to the pain of trying something and being blamed because on top of that, your daily job is not done, right? So I think you need to realize that the early adopter resource need two things. They need to have the right to fail, because some of those projects will fail, but we need to learn from those failures. And really that's where we go into a management time, which is fail fast, right? Don't make a proof of concept of $500,000 that takes 6 months. Make a proof of concept of $30,000 that take 2 weeks, right? Because then very quickly you will learn something and get better. And you have a book of people who have wrote software, which one of my favorite is the Lean Startup, which is the guy who were coding and how they develop new code and things like that. And you will see that, again, the successful software in this world are software that you could start to use and you love them because they answer some of your need, and you hate them because they are so immature, right? You wish they had that and you saw that. But 2 weeks later, that software answers your need. And 2 weeks later, you have new need, and those are the successful software, right? The software that comes with a complete solution, and we need to educate and train people for 6 months to be able to use it. For me, that doesn't work. Like when I look at SAP today, SAP in the early 2000s, what a good thing, right? Today, nobody enjoys using SAP. And this is why software like Salesforce and others are slowly emerging. And we will have a new generation when all of that, nobody train you to use your iPhone or your Android, right? You buy it, you use it, you fail, you learn, you get, your friends tell you, everybody. And those are the software, those are the solutions that's going to work. And I think if we think differently in the pharma and we think, no, we need to have training to do those, we are wrong, because it's only going to increase the pain. And what we want is a positive experience, which is one of the factors of change, right? So from the management perspective, fail fast, take people in the team of digitization that simplify, right? You need to have people that can simplify your process by making them more effective and more efficient. Some of the first step of the paper to glass will only make your project more efficient. So you're going to do a bad job, but you're going to do it faster, which then is going to free time to do a better job faster, right? And then you have effectiveness and efficiency. I think if you try to aim for both immediately, again, you overthink the problem. So the other thing I will say is that don't think for 6 months before trying something. Think and try, think a very short PDCA cycle. Plan to check that. When you plan something, you try it for 2 weeks. People like it, you keep it. People don't like it, you change a bit, you try again, and then you go, right? So those are some of the key. And we're not good at that in the pharma, right? In the pharma, we're more into the revolution, big change control kind of, we do nothing, and then 2 years later, we want to change everything, because we're not used yet to change what we do every day to improve it, right? Augmented reality, virtual reality can be also become the future of conduct qualification if it can be done. Yeah, totally. This is digitalization, right? Like we are discussing again with equipment manufacturer of what, can you use virtual reality to configure robotic? There was a presentation of Novartis on cell and gene therapy, one of the conference, again, operator training in virtual environment. And I was like, come on, you can do it. You can take a down flow boost. So they were explaining the benefit. One of the benefits is you don't need the down flow boost. So you save a couple of million not to have to build the down flow boost, train your people, or have to train people in a classified environment, right? So having it virtual will allow you to do 90% of the training without stopping your production. The other benefit they had is that because they knew that the laminar flow is impacted by the speed of the movement of the operator, you need to educate your muscle memory to move at a certain speed, which is not natural. When in a virtual reality, the guy moves his glove and the computer can, sense the speed of movement and show the effect you have on the laminar flow. So you understand the consequence of moving too fast, and you see, virtually what are those consequences, but also you get used at moving slower, because when you move too fast, you have a red light that you can't have in the real life, right? So I agree with you, virtual FAT is one, and again, paper to glass is already fantastic, right? Doing virtual FAT by having someone filling the protocol in the US and be able to call your QA overnight to review what has been done there, to say, yes, I'm happy, we will be able to leverage this test, but can you please add that, that certificate of calibration of the probe you use before you leave and you go back here with the plane, and then the QA tell you, which is never going to happen, right? So if you go, it goes a little bit in the lean thinking that as soon as something gets wrong, the QA will see it, will ask you to fix it before you go to the next step. So remote and virtual FAT and many other things, right? You can now have expert. We saw, more, maybe some of you have the benefit of that, but calling an expert overseas to review your batch record, teleconference, but even having an aseptic expert when you are in the clean room and you need to take an action which is, not usual, and having someone who can see what you see and help you to take the right action. Because again, when you go in all the risk management and things like that, we can detect something went wrong, right? It's part of our quality risk management. So we identify there is a risk, the likelihood of that risk happen. So you have an alert. And most of the time, we don't know what to do when there is an alert, because that didn't happen very often, right? And we don't want it to happen very often. So that's why it's also good to have all those digital forms to call someone who knows how you should react when those kind of things happen, right? And can guide you through. So, yeah. So I did my, little talk, and that's the first digitalization of CQV, and we're gonna. I'm happy to have fill the survey form and let us know if you want to have a more specific, quarterly and focus on a specific topic, or if you want to talk about case study. I know that in a part of the EXO, there were a few people that are doing digitalization and paperless validation, and we want to, we want to have more a knowledge sharing of what works, what doesn't work, what are the key factors, what are the good solutions on the market, what are the and not only one solution, how can we harmonize the solution, right? The use of OZPI to pull all the data, but also putting some API within the software so that you can have in the EDMS some other information that you wouldn't have, or in a batch, the status, whether your system is qualified coming from one system telling you, well, you shouldn't use it because it's not qualified yet, and have a system that prevent mistake to happen is where we want to go. Guys, are you still there?
Well, we've got time to take some questions, right?
If you have any specific question, like put them in the chat, or you can even put a post-it on the board, right? We're happy to discuss about it. Okay. I guess you're all in the bus going home listening to me or something like that.
Does anyone have any comments or any experiences to share? Or Pierre has covered it so well that no one has anything else to say.
So I cannot wait to have, those technical Tuesday face-to-face. So as soon as we can all be in a room and share those ideas, ISPE, I'm sure Linda and the team will try to that's like, again, there is certain things you can do digital, like this meeting. There are other things that I think the old way is still a good way, right? And what we would like is to not to do a one-off, but have different contribution to say, how can we move to those 4.0? Because again, the aim of the game here, I think if we can spend more time building quality in our system rather than, moving data on paper is what we want to do, right? The major obstacle when using paperless validation, so the first is to choose which solution you want to use, right? There is a series of solutions on the market. So your company need to choose, or your project need to choose which solution. That's the first one, right? That's going to take 6 months to 1 year before everybody agree and you sign a master agreement. Then the second thing you will see is, well, you need to have a process, right? Those digital solutions are still tools, but they don't define the data flow. So if you don't have a clear data flow, or if everybody wants to have their own data flow, you need to decide whether you do a top-down approach, means a global organization force a way of working to everybody, or if you allow every site to digitalize the way you want. So the pros and cons of the both, right? If the top-down approach happened, and it happened because you have a digital solution, right? You will need now to educate all the sites to do differently. That have nothing to do with the digitization, but the digitization will be a constraint or a catalyst to that change, which is going to take you another 6 to 1 year, 6 months to 1 year to get there. If you allow every site to do whatever they want, you have the risk that you're going to digitalize things, but you will never be able to go to the 4.0 because the data set that every site is producing is so much different that you cannot consolidate from a global perspective, right? So those are really the first two roadblocks or two big decisions. Once you have done that, the way we see it, right? Depending on the solution, right? Some of the solutions, once people have used them, they will never go back on paper, right? Honestly, there are really some solutions. And again, for me, SAP is a bad example because if you use SAP, you miss your Excel sheet, right? Now, I know that SAP can do a lot of things that Excel cannot do from the higher management, but from the user perspective, any SAP user I know have an Excel file beside it to cheat, right? So what you want to have is a positive experience, right? So you need to start small. And what we think will work best is maybe to put a little task like a requalification or something that you will have to do, but it's quite well in control and you can digitalize it. Or you could have a project which is not too big, where people are enthusiastic and they see the benefit. And once they've touched the benefit, they will want it more. So that's the second. And one of the things you need to consider is your digitalized solution scalable, right? Because we see people that are developing very clever solution, but the level of knowledge and to use that solution is so high that it is not scalable. That is typically, you know, someone who will build a fantastic access database in his backyard, but he never have the bandwidth to scale up to that database to multiple sites around the world and things like that. And then again, for me, I will tend to do to available off-the-shelf solution and try not in the pharma or job are not to build those solutions. So the idea that if you can have something that you have a series of developers, because when you go to the software, the key is to have good developer that can be fast to implement any bugs or any improvement based on the user need. And we don't know as a user what we need until we use it, right? So that's really the lean startup. As we start to use it, we say, oh, I want that. And if you have it tomorrow, you keep using it. And if you say, I want that, and you don't use it tomorrow, we don't develop it any further. So choose your system. Make sure your approach is scalable, because the digitalization needs to be scalable, otherwise it's a waste of time. And make sure that you have a team that can do those short PDCA. What are the quantified benefits used to justify digitalization initiative? Okay, I'll give you one, right? The number of times you have to write attachment 1 of page 1 of 200, you will write that 200 times. In a digital solution, you don't. Another benefit of that's, you know, that is simply paper to glass, right? The fact that I don't need to run and post execution with the same folder to 3 different desks, and everybody can review and sign at the same time, regardless whether they are in Singapore or in the US, right? So yes, there is a cost, and the return on investment, and again, you need to ask your the solutions that are available today on the market are mature enough to give you a number on those, right? And that's some of the things we discussed in the ISPE paperless community of practice is who is paying the license? Is it global? Is it the project? What is the return on investment? What is the potential saving? And it goes from, we're not going to save anything, but our people will be happier and they keep working with us, so we have knowledge retention, to some people that show you you're going to save 20 million a year, right? So I think, you know, we're in between those two, and it depends on the scale. But if you keep it small, your digitalization will only be beneficial very quickly. If you try to make it too big, too fast, you know, you might overwhelm people and then they give up and you don't have the user adoption. And a digitalization is only successful if you have user adoption. 6:30, guys, I'm going to let you off your bus now. But yeah, you know, I love the topic. So anybody, you're free to use the board, drop an email to ISPE. We can have other discussion, and there is so much to learn that you know, we welcome any feedback or any sharing.
I think the parting message is start small, fail fast.
Yeah, do that, right? Do that, whichever solution. Okay, guys.
Thanks, Pierre.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a good evening. And Pierre, now you can go home as well, and Joon.
Yeah, thank you.
See you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.